The house on the corner of Maple Street in San Diego was beautiful. It had a white picket fence, a garden filled with yellow roses, and a porch swing that creaked gently in the Pacific breeze. To anyone driving by, it looked like the perfect home of a perfect couple. Isabella Cruz had lived in this house for 8 years. She was a woman who believed in the power of a promise. When she married Marco Villanueva, she thought she had found a partner for life. Marco was a man who seemed to radiate goodness. He was a leader in their local church, a man who organized food drives and always stayed late to help clean up after community events. "You're a lucky woman, Isabella," her neighbors would say. Marco is a saint. But over the last 6 months, the saint had started to change. It started with the silence. Marco used to come home and tell Isabella everything about his day, the people he met, the jokes he heard, the small things that made him smile. Now he came home like a stranger. He moved through the house like a ghost. He would sit on the sofa, bathed in the blue light of his smartphone, his thumbs flying across the screen. If Isabella walked into the room, he would quickly flip the phone over, his face hardening into a mask of annoyance. "Who are you talking to, Marco?" she would ask softly. "Just work, Isabella. Logistics. Everything is a mess at the office." "Don't be so nosy," he would snap. The work started taking him away more often. San Francisco, Las Vegas, Phoenix. The destinations changed, but the pattern remained the same. He would leave on a Friday morning and return late Sunday night, smelling of expensive cologne and airport coffee. Isabella began to feel a cold, creeping dread in her chest. It wasn't just that he was gone, it was the way he looked at her when he was home. He didn't look at her with love anymore. He looked at her like she was a problem he was trying to solve. She didn't know then that the man she shared a bed with was building a second world, a world where she didn't exist. The discovery happened on a Tuesday. It was a day like any other, filled with the mundane tasks of laundry and grocery lists. Marco had left for the office in a hurry, leaving his heavy winter coat draped over the back of a kitchen chair. As Isabella went to hang the coat in the closet, she felt a stiff square of paper in the inner pocket. She reached in, expecting to find a dry cleaning receipt or a business card. Instead, she pulled out an envelope made of thick, cream-colored paper with a gold silk lining. Her heart began to beat a little faster. It felt heavy in her hand. She turned it over and saw the elegant calligraphy on the front. It wasn't a business invitation. She opened it. The card inside was beautiful, decorated with embossed silver bells and delicate ivy. The wedding of Marco Villanueva and Elena Reyes. Saturday, June 14th at 2:00 p.m. St. Andrew's Cathedral. Isabella stood frozen in the middle of her kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second feeling like a hammer blow. She read the name again. Marco Villanueva, her husband's name. Who was Elena Reyes? She searched her memory, looking for a cousin, a co-worker, a friend she might have forgotten. But the name was a total blank. Then she saw the RSVP card tucked behind the invitation. It was a small, square card that had been filled out in Marco's unmistakable, sharp handwriting. He had checked the box that said, "Joyfully accepts." He wasn't just a guest. He was the groom. Isabella felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. She leaned against the kitchen counter, her breath coming in short, jagged gaspes. This couldn't be real. It was a joke, a mistake. Maybe there was another Marco Villanueva in San Diego, but she knew the truth. She knew the secret phone calls. She knew the weekend business trips. She knew the way he had been pulling away from her. She looked at the invitation again. Saturday. That was only 4 days away. Marco had told her he had a logistics conference in San Francisco this coming weekend. Isabella didn't scream. She didn't cry. A strange, cold clarity washed over her. She realized that if she confronted him now, he would lie. He was an expert at lies. He would tell her it was a misunderstanding or a prank, or that he was doing it for a secret work mission. She decided in that moment that she was done with his words. She wanted to see the truth with her own eyes. The morning of the wedding was sunny and bright, the kind of day people dream of for a ceremony. Marco was in an unusually good mood. He whistled as he packed his small leather suitcase. "I'll be back Sunday night, Bella," he said, calling her by the nickname he hadn't used in months. He leaned in and kissed her on the cheek. His skin felt cold against hers. Try to relax. Go to the spa. You've been looking stressed lately. I'll do that, Marco, Isabella said, her voice steady. Have a safe flight. She watched from the window as his silver sedan pulled out of the driveway. As soon as he turned the corner, she moved. She had already prepared her outfit, a simple dark navy dress and a wide-brimmed hat that would hide her face. She didn't want to look like a wife, she wanted to look like a shadow. She drove to St. Andrew's Cathedral, a massive stone building with stained glass windows that glowed in the afternoon sun. She parked 3 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance. Her heart was a drum in her ears, but her hands were like ice. She stood across the street, shielded by the trunk of a large oak tree. She watched as the guests began to arrive. They were dressed in silks and linens, carrying boxes wrapped in silver paper. They looked happy. They looked like people who believed in love. Then, a black limousine pulled up to the curb. The door opened and Marco stepped out. He was wearing a custom-made tuxedo that Isabella had never seen. He looked handsome. He looked radiant. He looked like a man who didn't have a care in the world. He stood at the bottom of the steps, adjusting his cufflinks and smiling at a group of men who appeared to be his groomsmen. Then the second door of the limo opened. A woman stepped out. She was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with dark hair and a smile that could light up a room. She was wearing a white lace dress that trailed behind her like a cloud. Marco took her hand and kissed it. Isabella felt a sharp pain in her chest, as if a physical thread had been snapped. She realized she wasn't just watching a betrayal, she was watching a replacement. The church bells began to ring, a deep, resonant sound that echoed through the streets of San Diego. The guests filed inside. The heavy oak doors were pulled shut. Isabella took a deep breath. She adjusted her hat, straightened her shoulders, and walked toward the cathedral. She wasn't going to a wedding. She was going to an ending. The inside of the cathedral was cool and smelled of incense and lilies. Isabella slipped into the very back row, staying in the shadows of a large stone pillar. The music began. A soft, beautiful melody played on a grand pipe organ. Marco stood at the altar, waiting. Elena walked down the aisle, her father at her side. To everyone in the room, it was a picture of pure joy. To Isabella, it was a horror movie. She watched as the priest began the ceremony. He spoke of love, of honor, and of the sacred bond of marriage. Isabella wanted to laugh, but her throat felt like it was filled with sand. Finally, the priest reached the moment that every movie makes famous, but which rarely happens in real life. If anyone here knows of any lawful reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, the priest said, his voice echoing through the vaulted ceiling, let them speak now, or forever hold their peace. The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear the rustle of the bride's dress. You could hear the soft breathing of the guests. Isabella stood up. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She simply walked into the center of the aisle and looked directly at the altar. I do, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the silence of the church, it sounded like a gunshot. Marco turned. When his eyes met Isabella's, his face didn't just go pale, it went gray. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. He looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. Isabella, he whispered, his voice cracking. The guests began to murmur. Elena turned around, her veil fluttering. She looked confused, then terrified. Marco, who is this? I am his wife, Isabella said, walking toward the altar. My name is Isabella Cruz Villanueva. We have been married for 8 years, and as far as I know, we are not divorced. The murmur turned into a roar of shock. Elena's face crumpled. She looked at Marco, her hands beginning to shake. Marco, what is she talking about? You said your wife died. Marco tried to speak, but no words came out. He looked like a cornered animal. Suddenly, Elena gasped. She clutched her stomach and began to sway. Marco, I don't feel... Before anyone could catch her, the bride collapsed onto the marble floor. The wedding was over. The crime scene was just beginning. The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights and chaos. An ambulance arrived to take Elena to the hospital. Marco tried to get into the ambulance with her, but the paramedics pushed him back. You're not her legal husband, sir, one of them said. Isabella followed them to the hospital. She sat in the waiting room, still wearing her navy dress. She felt strangely calm. The worst had already happened. Now there was only the truth left to uncover. 2 police officers arrived at the hospital. They had been called by the priest, who realized that a crime had been committed in his church. One of the officers, a woman named Detective Miller, sat down across from Isabella. "Mrs. Villanueva, I'm going to need you to tell me everything." Isabella talked for an hour. She told them about the invitation, the weekend trips, and the phone calls. While she was talking, another officer was interviewing Elena in a private room. Detective Miller returned 30 minutes later, her face grim. "We just spoke with Miss Reyes," Miller said. "She's stable, but she's in shock. She's 4 months pregnant, Mrs. Villanueva. She truly believed your husband was a widower. He told her you were killed in a car accident in 2018. He even showed her a fake death certificate." Isabella felt a chill go down her spine. A death certificate? He planned this. He didn't just make a mistake. He built a whole new life on a grave he dug for me. "It's worse than that," Miller said, lowering her voice. "We've just run a preliminary check on Marco's name. He's been using 2 different social security numbers. He has 2 sets of bank accounts, and he has life insurance policies for both of you." "I knew about our policy," Isabella said. "We got it when we bought the house." "No," Miller said. "He took out a second policy on you 6 months ago, a large one, $500,000, and it has an accelerated death clause. It pays out immediately in the event of an accidental death." Isabella felt the air leave her lungs. The accidents happen, recording she had made weeks ago suddenly made sense. Marco wasn't just trying to marry someone else. He was waiting for her to die so he could fund his new life with her blood money. Isabella reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "I have something you need to hear," she said. Months earlier, when Marco's behavior first started to change, Isabella had installed a recording app on her phone. She had done it because she thought she was going crazy. Marco had been gaslighting her, telling her that she was imagining things, that she was forgetful, that she was mentally unstable. She played the first recording for Detective Miller. It was a Tuesday night in April. You could hear the sound of the television in the background. Then Marco's voice, cold and sharp. "You need to stop asking questions, Isabella. People disappear all the time in this city. Accidents happen on the freeway. No one asks questions when a car goes over a bridge at night. Do you understand me?" Isabella's voice on the recording sounded small and terrified. "Are you threatening me, Marco?" "I'm giving you a warning," Marco's voice replied. "If you ever leave me, or if you ever try to take what's mine, you'll regret it. You won't even see it coming." Detective Miller listened to the recording twice. She looked at Isabella with a new kind of respect. "You were recording him because you were afraid for your life." "I didn't know if anyone would believe me," Isabella said. "Everyone thought he was a saint. I needed proof that the man behind the rose garden was a monster." "This isn't just bigamy anymore," Miller said, standing up. "This is premeditated intent. He was clearing the way for a new life, and you were the obstacle he was planning to remove." The arrest happened in the hallway of the hospital. Marco was pacing back and forth near the maternity ward, trying to look like a worried father-to-be. He was still wearing his tuxedo trousers, though he had taken off the jacket. He looked like a man who was still trying to figure out how to lie his way out of this. Isabella stood at the end of the hallway and watched. Detective Miller and her partner approached him. "Marco Villanueva?" "Yes," Marco said, putting on a helpful smile. "Is Elena okay? Can I see her?" "Mr. Villanueva, you are under arrest for bigamy, identity theft, and insurance fraud," Miller said. Marco's smile didn't just fade, it vanished. He tried to pull away, but the officers were faster. They grabbed his arms and forced them behind his back. The sound of the metal handcuffs clicking shut echoed through the quiet hospital wing. "This is a mistake," Marco shouted, his voice echoing off the linoleum walls. "Isabella is crazy. She's trying to ruin me because she's jealous." He looked at Isabella. His eyes weren't the eyes of the man she had married. They were dark, filled with a boiling rage. For a second, Isabella felt a flash of the old fear. But then she looked at the handcuffs. She looked at the police. She realized that the saint was gone. He was just a man in a cheap tuxedo who had run out of lies. The guests from the wedding, the ones who had followed them to the hospital, watched in horror as their perfect friend was led away in chains. Elena's parents stood by their daughter's door, their faces filled with a mixture of grief and fury. Marco had fooled everyone, but the truth had finally caught up to him in a place of healing. As the investigation into Marco widened, the police found that the trail of lies didn't start in San Diego. It led all the way back to a small town in Nevada 10 years ago. Detective Miller called Isabella into the station 2 weeks after the arrest. "We've been digging into Marco's past," Miller said, spreading a folder of old newspapers on the desk. "Before he moved to California, he lived in Reno. He had a girlfriend there named Sarah Jenkins." Isabella looked at the photo of Sarah. She was a pretty girl with a kind smile. "What happened to her?" Isabella asked. "She died," Miller said. "She was found at the bottom of a steep hiking trail. It was ruled an accidental fall. There were no witnesses, and the case was closed within a month." Isabella felt a wave of nausea. "Did she have life insurance?" $100,000, Miller said. "And guess who the sole beneficiary was? A man named Mark Villa, one of Marco's many aliases. He used that money to move to San Diego and start his logistics business. He used Sarah's death to fund your wedding, Isabella." The room felt cold. Isabella realized that she wasn't just his wife. She was his next project. He had a pattern. He would find a woman, marry her or move in with her, take out a policy, and then wait for an accident. He had done it to Sarah. He was planning to do it to Isabella. And eventually, he would have done it to Elena. "We've reopened the Nevada case," Miller said. "Witnesses are coming forward who remember Marco, or Mark, being angry and controlling. The pattern is too perfect to be a coincidence." Isabella realized that by standing up in that church, she hadn't just stopped a wedding. She had stopped a serial killer. The trial of Marco Villanueva became a media sensation. It was called the Cathedral Crime Case. Isabella had to stand in a courtroom and face the man she had loved for 8 years. Marco sat at the defense table, his hair perfectly combed, wearing a conservative suit. He still tried to look like the victim. His lawyers argued that he was a troubled man who just loved too much and got confused. But then Isabella took the stand. She spoke clearly. She told the jury about the roses in the garden, and then she played the recordings. She played the sound of his threats. She showed the second life insurance policy. Then Elena took the stand. She was carrying her baby now, a small boy who looked remarkably like Marco. She cried as she described how Marco had taken her to his wife's grave, a random headstone in a cemetery he had lied about. She described how he had promised her a life of safety and truth. The two women who should have been enemies sat on the same side of the courtroom. They were bound together by the same lie. The most powerful moment of the trial came when the prosecutor showed the fake death certificate Marco had made for Isabella. "Mr. Villanueva," the prosecutor said, pointing at the document, "you weren't waiting for your wife to die. You had already killed her on paper. You were just waiting for the physical world to catch up to your imagination, weren't you?" Marco didn't answer. He just stared at his hands. For the first time, the Titan looked small. The jury didn't take long. They deliberated for only 4 hours. When the verdict was read, the courtroom was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. On the count of bigamy, guilty. On the count of identity theft, guilty. On the count of insurance fraud, guilty. On the count of attempted murder, guilty. Marco didn't flinch. He seemed to have disconnected from reality. The judge looked at him with a look of pure disgust. "Mr. Villanueva, you used the most sacred institutions, marriage and the church, as tools for your own greed. You treated human lives like line items on a balance sheet. You are a predator who wears the skin of a neighbor." Marco was sentenced to 45 years in prison. With the Nevada case still pending, it was likely he would never walk free again. As he was let out of the courtroom, he tried to look at Isabella, but she didn't look back. She was looking at the window, at the sunshine outside. She was thinking about the yellow roses in her garden and how she was going to dig them up and plant something new. In the months after the trial, Isabella's life was a whirlwind of change. She couldn't stay in the house on Maple Street. Every corner held a memory of a lie. She sold the house and gave half the money to Elena. "You have a son to raise," Isabella told her. "He shouldn't have to pay for his father's crimes." Elena moved to a different state, changing her name to protect her child. They stayed in touch for a while. two survivors of a storm that almost drowned them. Isabella moved to a small town in Oregon near the mountains. She changed her name back to her maiden name. She found a job working in a library, a place of quiet and truth. She realized that her heart wasn't broken. It was rebuilt. It was stronger now, made of a material that could detect a lie from a mile away. She often thought about that Saturday afternoon in San Diego. She thought about the gold invitation. She realized that she had been given a gift, the gift of an instinct. If she had stayed home, if she had ignored the invitation, she would have been a headline in a newspaper. Woman dies in tragic freeway accident. Instead, she was a woman drinking tea on a porch in Oregon, watching the snow fall. A year later, a reporter from a national magazine tracked her down. He wanted to do a "Where are they now?" story. "Do you hate him?" the reporter asked, his pen poised over his notebook. Isabella thought for a long time. "Hate is a strong word," she said. "Hate takes energy. I don't want to give him any more of my energy. He took 8 years. He doesn't get another second." "What would you say to other women who feel like something is wrong?" Isabella looked at him with her clear, sharp eyes. "I would say, trust your gut. If the man you love makes you feel like you're going crazy, you're probably not. You're just seeing a truth he's trying to hide. I didn't go to that church to cause a scene. I went to save my life." The reporter wrote it down. "I went to save my life." "Some people called you a hero," the reporter said. "Others called you a vigilante." "I'm just a woman who refused to be a victim," Isabella said. "That's the most dangerous thing a person can be to a man like Marco." Isabella started a garden in her new home. This time she didn't plant yellow roses. She planted wildflowers. They were messy, unpredictable, and strong. They didn't need a picket fence to look beautiful. She learned that love shouldn't feel like a secret. It shouldn't feel like a locked phone or a hushed conversation. It should feel like the sun, clear, bright, and open. She often thought of Elena's son. She hoped he would grow up to be a man of truth. She hoped he would never know the saint his father pretended to be, but would instead know the strength of the mother who survived him. The crime scene at St. Andrew's Cathedral was eventually cleaned up. The church held a ceremony of rededication to clear the air of the lies that had been spoken at the altar. But for the people of San Diego, it would always be the place where a wedding became a crime scene. Isabella realized that sometimes the most sacred thing you can do is speak up when the world wants you to be quiet. 10 years passed. Marco Villanueva died in prison, alone in a cell. No one claimed his body. No one held a funeral. He vanished from the world, just as he had hoped Isabella would. Isabella, now an older woman with silver in her hair, sat on her porch in Oregon. She held a book in her lap, but she wasn't reading. She was looking at the horizon. She knew that betrayal is a wound that leaves a scar. But a scar is also a sign of healing. It's proof that you were hurt, but it's also proof that you survived. She thought about the golden invitation one last time. She realized it wasn't a curse. It was a map. It was the universe giving her a choice: stay in the lie or walk into the truth. She chose the truth, and in doing so, she found a life that was finally hers. The most dangerous lies are the ones spoken by the people who say they love you. But the most powerful truth is the one you speak for yourself. Isabella Cruz stood up, walked into her warm, quiet house, and closed the door. She was safe, she was whole, and she was finally truly free.